Welcome to the program, everyone. How's it going? It is Talkback with Thane and Sophia. Check out our brand new website, talkback.co.nz. Sophia, how are you? She's the mastermind behind the website. Welcome to the show. Are you there? Yes, I see you there.
Pretty good.
Great.
How's it going? Yeah, I am.
Is it my internet letting me down, or is it your internet letting you down?
I don't know, because to me it's your internet, to you it's me.
Oh my God, this is one of those things where you just don't have Voyager internet on, and it's real shocking. It's a disappointment. But
Bring
anyways,
Seeby in. Where is he?
Seeby, welcome to the show, man. We're dying out here.
Hi. Is my sound better this time?
Yeah, sounds great.
Yes.
Oh, okay, so
perfect.
yeah, basically I was using Safari, so clearly Safari sucks with Restream, so I'm using Chrome, so I should have done that from the beginning.
Oh, no worries. Hey, yeah, welcome to the program. Hey, I'm just going to quickly bring on Benny Boy. Benny, welcome you into the program as well. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. I'm going to be checking the facts tonight. I've got a blank A4 bit of paper and a new Sharpie, so
holy moly,
up here for knowledge.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. We'll see you very shortly. Seeby, what a day though, eh? What do you reckon to Jacinda and the red light, green light, and the step up in the resurgence?
Well, it's very Squid Games, isn't it? You know, stop on red and go on green. You know, otherwise you get eliminated if you're not vaccinated.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Actually, I think Breakfast Radio, you probably saw that the Breakfast Show did like a Jacinda Squid Game mashup.
Oh,
did you see that?
No, I missed that.
Oh, it was quite cool. Yeah, they had Jacinda as the girl, and then if you weren't vaccinated, you got like lasered on. You know. Anyway.
Yeah, but she made that very clear. That was pretty much how your life is going to roll out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that by and large they've done a pretty good job. I mean, obviously it was good to keep.
You know what, guys? I'm gonna try and log in on my.
She's having issues with her internet over there,
right?
So, but carry on.
Yeah, I mean, if you compare New Zealand's response to the Trump administration, I mean, Trump was all just basically denial and chaos and overloading and all that kind of thing. So and I think New Zealand was the first country to come up with a level system, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I think that was really sensible to have kind of an understandable system of where we're at. I guess the red light, green light, orange light thing is basically an admission that we've lost control of the situation and that we're not going to pursue elimination anymore. So that's pretty clear that now we're going to have COVID in the community permanently, and we basically can't lock down anymore. So another clever system, because as I say, I've got friends in other countries and they just kind of have general chaos, and so I think that the four alert systems and now the traffic light system is quite understandable and kind of makes sense, and it's fit for purpose. So someone in the beehive is doing a reasonable amount of thinking about how to make it understandable for people and apply it to our situation. But yeah, obviously the lockdown has gone on a long time, and I've got a lot of business friends, and we're all starting to really hurt, and obviously different industries like hospital and things. So you saw, Eurobar went under, Saxon and Parole, which was a great restaurant that only opened in Commercial Bay, they've gone under. And I mean, I feel sorry for all the people in Commercial Bay, because that was a $2 or $3 billion development at the bottom of Queen Street, and they literally opened the whole mega mall thing on like January 2020, and the rents are sky high, some of the most expensive in Auckland. So all of those shop owners have basically had no trading, and they're all feeling immense pain. So it's interesting, because I've got friends in London and LA and all over the world really, and it seems to me that they're all 100% open. So New Zealand's kind of a bit behind. We did so well with the elimination, and now everyone else in the world has just decided to live with it and get on. So the US, I believe, is about 55% vaccinated, And my friends over there just say everything's 100% normal. They've basically just decided, okay, some people are going to have COVID, some people are going to get vaccinated, some people aren't. But they're only at 55% vaccination, and life is 100% normal. You can go to concerts, do anything. So
the only thing I don't really understand is the fact that they're going through DHB. So, a DHB in Auckland can get up to, 90%, 95%. Then we're waiting for a Taranaki or Waikato to catch up. The DHB thing's the thing that's kind of throwing me off a little.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 90% goal is okay. As a business owner, I'm just concerned that if we start to slow down before 90%, and then we basically get told that we're never going to open until you get to 90% and you have to, which is kind of the message a little bit, then, we're reaping a huge economic difference. And the difference between another 5% probably isn't that much. So we're sort of living under lockdown conditions when we're only talking 1/20th of the population difference. So clearly they've done some modeling. But as I say, the US is 100% open. The UK is 100% open. Gold Coast, my friends over there are partying and things, and they're basically just the people that want to get vaccinated have been vaccinated. They've got lower vaccination than we've already got, and they seem to be coping. So yes, COVID swept through a few months ago most countries, so people have either had it or they've passed away, obviously, and we want to minimize that. But I think we're going for a very, very high target, which is fine, but it has an economic cost.
Yeah, I heard the UK's on the ropes again. They're still living with it, but I think infections and deaths have kind of ramped up again.
Yeah, well, I suppose my friends are all kind of, 30, 40 something, so they're probably not the risk group. So when I see them out and about and, in Europe and all that kind of thing, well, they're probably not so affected. So the people that are sick, I guess, are a little bit hidden. So, but, we've done a good job. But, definitely the latest lockdown is having a massive financial impact that's going to be felt for a long time.
And are we good with borrowing all the money to help everybody out? I mean, that seems pretty good.
Well, we don't really borrow the money.
Right, we just print it.
We create the money, and when you have a fixed amount of stuff and you just create more money, what happens is there's the same amount of stuff and there's more money, so prices go up, and we're already seeing inflation. So, we're seeing house price inflation, we're seeing food inflation, we're seeing inflation start to rear its head all over the time, and that's why the Reserve Bank is starting to crank up interest rates a bit, because the cure for inflation is to have high interest rates, because it encourages people to save and puts a cap on prices getting out of control and things. So
I've seen nothing but pretty good. Well, it's been probably 60-40 really in support of Jacinda finally getting it done. What's come around again is that why didn't we do this from the start? But I don't believe we'd figured that out. But more money for struggling businesses ain't going to fix everything, but it's a start. A promise of Christmas out of lockdown, and now we're on our way to 90% vaccinated. So there seems to be a plan there.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously need the borders open for tourism, and we were never going to have the borders open under the old system, because while we were pursuing a course of elimination, we had to be very, very careful about anyone getting in. And then there's a huge cost to things like MIQ and the facilities and the staff and all that kind of thing. So now that we accept that we have COVID and we're exactly the same as the rest of the world, then we can remove the border restrictions. We can travel again. We can have tourists. Our tourism economy can get cranked up. So, yeah.
Okay. I'm just getting through some messages here. Research by University of Otago Wellington found that influenza kills about 500 New Zealanders each year, making it probably New Zealand's biggest single infectious disease killer. Is this just way, way, way out of context?
I think it is, actually, because it does kill that many people, but the flu that you're talking about started in like the early 1900s, and this is the dribble end of it. So we're not there yet with COVID. So it's different, because that's what I read that as well, and I was like, what? So what are we worrying about with a couple of deaths? So I suppose what we're looking at the moment is, COVID would be completely different to that. It would not be, just
I mean, it's pretty interesting, because the Australian press is reporting on this, and The Intercept, which broke the Snowden files and that kind of thing, have basically started coming out with a whole lot of information, virtually proving that this is a man-made virus. So there's a lot of information that in the next 2 or 3 days, the NIH of the USA, I think it stands for National Institute. Anyway, I can forget the acronym, but basically they're going to come out and admit that they were funding the Wuhan lab, because there were 3 labs worldwide that basically did research on things like coronaviruses and gain of function and all that kind of thing. There was one in the US, one in Russia, and one in China. And basically these 3 labs had all of the kind of dangerous things like smallpox on ice. And originally the World Health Organization wanted to kill all these viruses and no one ever have them again. But the Americans basically said, well, hang on, what if we want to use this for a future medicine, or what if we want to have, these viruses? So there was a lab set up in the 1950s that had a store of infectious diseases. And then because the Americans had one, the Russians wanted one, and then the Chinese wanted one. But essentially, obviously this sounds like conspiracy theory stuff, and a year ago it was conspiracy theory stuff, but it's actually coming out that and when you think there's a lab in Wuhan, right, that's called the Coronavirus Research Lab, and then a virus comes out of Wuhan, it's pretty obvious that it probably didn't come from a bat. I mean, Occam's razor says the most obvious thing. So we're going to see essentially, and I think even the New Zealand Herald about a week ago ran a story that was covering some of the Australian press on this. So if you're not up with the play, I'm not a crazy conspiracy theorist. I always thought it seemed very suspicious that there was a virology lab in Wuhan, and then we had a virus that came out of Wuhan. So I think that this is a highly infectious disease that has additional problems on just influenza, but I'm 99.9% sure it's man-made. So we've got a man-made problem, and then we've got the vaccines, which is a man-made solution. But I mean, the economic cost is in the tens of trillions,
Craziness. Benny Boy, your thoughts quickly, our fact checker there?
Absolutely, totally checks out. Man-made virus, Wuhan Institute of Virology, funded by Anthony Fauci, nonetheless. And another amazing celebrity to come out of this one is Bat Lady. The lady that would scrape around on the floor of caves through bat guano, looking for the best, most contagious viruses, then of course taking to the lab, manipulating them and seeing if they can actually get them to leech onto these humanized rats and mice. That's when they'd really know that they were potent. And of course, news today, the Nipah virus is actually an 80% mortality rate has been found at the Institute of Virology. Where? In Wuhan.
In Wuhan.
There you go. Thank you very much, mate. Hey, a lot of great questions here. Let's go through them. Question for the debates: how come China to this day isn't being accountable for the leak of the virus? They seem really hands off with no apology. And just say, Seeby, if they do if they are found guilty of, what can the world do? What do we do? Well, it's China. You can do stuff all.
I'm not necessarily a huge fan of some of the things that China does. So obviously the Uyghur population is essentially being wiped out. Kind of how the Jews were under the Nazis. There's millions of people in concentration camps, and the Chinese are using artificial intelligence to basically do predictive policing, almost like Minority Report thought crime. So, if you type something into a messaging app on your phone in China and you're talking to someone, that gets picked up by the government, you get a black flag, and then you get sent to a reprogramming center. So China is becoming very, very scary, dystopian, and using technology to its maximum. Now, the entire world is actually monitored because obviously the American NSA, as we know from Snowden, has access to everyone's cell phones, but they're not taking, direct action on that information. They have all that information, so they can see everything that all of us do, which is a bit scary. But when all of a sudden you get someone in power that starts using that information, that's kind of the route that China is going. However, the Wuhan lab was actually funded by the Americans, and a lot of the research was being done by the Americans. So I actually have the article here. So it's basically the NIH is about to admit gain of function experiments and was farming out experiments to a company called EcoHealth. This is going to be announced in a couple of days. EcoHealth Alliance, led by the controversial Peter Daszak, failed to report that they had created a chimera bat coronavirus which could infect humans, and was working closely with Anthony Fauci. So, I mean, there was a lot of hate directed at Fauci, which I thought was unfounded. And obviously Trump was a big sort of, talking him down. But it turns out that Trump may have actually been, right involved. So it's a pretty crazy, evolving story.
Have you opened up your Truth social media account yet?
No, so I looked at the website, and then obviously it was taken offline because Trump's own account, my understanding it was taken over offline. I haven't checked, but Trump's own account got hacked, and someone posted a pig defecating on its own testicles. And of course about 300 fake Trump accounts came up because they didn't have any oversight type thing. So Trump has basically discovered that it's more complicated to run a social network than he first thought. So,
right, okay. Andrew is saying, what is Andrew saying here? Apart from the disease itself, which is the problem, the cure is usually the objective. What does Seeby think that someone is trying to achieve from all of this?
I don't have an opinion on this, but I mean, if you want to think about these kind of things. I mean, obviously there is huge money that is trading hands publicly or privately on the cure. So a man-made problem has occurred. Now, whether that was an accident or deliberate, we don't really know, and I can't speculate. But obviously the solution, the vaccines, are making tens of billions of dollars for the vaccine companies. Now, maybe Pfizer and the like, we need to be thankful for them, because if we didn't have them, then the whole world will be locked down permanently. So maybe there are saviors, but certainly they are making a lot of money from the solution to a man-made problem. And so I'm not going to speculate they did it or anything like that. We just don't have that information. But there is a lot of money being made.
Wow. Crazy money too, eh? Just crazy money. Legit.
Yeah, I think Pfizer in the last quarter made like $30 billion or something. Don't know the exact figure, but it was like a hell of a lot, like a record of all time, money printing press. And of course, it's all government. So basically, the population, we as a population is going to pay in terms of inflation, debt, or taxation. So when say a government, Labour or National or whatever, if they want to pay for something like Pfizer, there's only three ways that a government can get money. One is to do taxation, which is the most honest form of getting money and the least popular. So politicians tend to avoid it. The other is going into debt, which is very popular with modern Western countries these days. And then, using China and the likes to bankroll us. And the other way is basically inflation, to devalue your currency. And so that's what a lot of countries are doing. So
can I ask a question around that? So when we borrow money, and this is going to seem like I'm an idiot, and I'm okay with that, I'll take one for the team here. Who are we borrowing it off? And are they borrowing money off other people? Where is all this money coming from?
So there is international borrowing, which is kind of a trade deficit and a trade surplus between countries. But by and large, when a country such as the US needs money, like you've seen in the US, they keep on having problems with their debt ceiling, so they raise the debt ceiling. All the debt ceiling is an arbitrary limit to basically say, are we going to pay our creditors or not? And if they default, they basically say, we're not going to pay our creditors. So by going into debt and then more and more debt and not ever paying your creditors, it's kind of like an illusion, because the creditors aren't getting paid anyway. But essentially that money is created literally out of thin air. So the Federal Reserve Bank of the US it's a very misleading name, because it's not federal, it's not part of the government, and it's not a reserve. It doesn't actually have anything itself. The Federal Reserve was set up in 1917 by a group of 8 banking families, and it was effectively a partnership between the US government and the banking families. And it's effectively the banking families wanted to have a unified single currency, and then they wanted the government to enforce that. So the way that you force someone to use a currency is you tax in that currency, because then you have an incentive. If you have property taxes or something, you have to go out and earn money in that currency in order to be able to pay your taxes.
Right.
And also, basically, the US government could then act as an enforcement arm and say,
Right.
if you don't pay your taxes, we'll police you, we'll, throw you in jail or whatever. Now, the benefit to the bankers is that they get a police force, and the benefit to the politicians is they get an infinite supply of money. So before the Federal Reserve, there was 3,000 small independent banks in the US. A lot of them issued their own currency. And from 1776, when the US was formed, to 1917, the definition of money was gold and silver. So money has always kind of historically been gold and silver. So 1 ounce of silver was $1, and 20 ounces of silver was 1 ounce of gold, which was $20. And so that was fixed, and there was no kind of inflation. And so before 1917, a US dollar basically said it was a promissory note. You could take a note to the bank, and then you could get your gold and silver coins. And so it was just an easier way of carrying those things around. But when that link was basically severed, so one of the reasons the politicians loved the idea so much, and this goes all the way back to the 1600s with the Medici families in Venice, but I won't give you the whole history. But one of the reasons is that a lot of European families actually had a lot of trouble raising money for wars and things because they didn't have infinite money. So countries like one of the reasons Napoleon started losing is because he actually ran out of money. So he had to go beg, borrow, and steal to wealthy families. And he was actually bankrolled by people like the Medicis and wealthy merchant families. And he would say, I've got to pay my soldiers. I need to give them gold and silver. Is there any families that have got things? So you had to have this kind of, wartime money raising effort. So once the currency was decoupled from gold and silver, and we've been moving further and further away into just kind of imaginary numbers, then the government could say, cool, well, when we have some project, we can just print a whole lot of money out of thin air. But every time you print money, it's a stealth taxation on the population because you steal the purchasing power. If you have $1 trillion of money and then you create another $1 trillion, anyone that has $1 in their bank, in a few months' time, it's going to be worth 50 cents. But there's like a delay because it takes a while for things to catch up and people to realize, hey, my money's not, doesn't seem to be buying as much anymore. So with the price rises and things like housing in New Zealand, it's not so much that the value of houses is increasing. The value of a house is still the value of a house. The dollar price of a house is increasing, but actually that's the same thing as the value of a dollar falling. So all that's happening is houses have the same physical property value, but it's just that the value of money is falling. And that's basically been driven through inflationary policies since the housing bubble. So since 2008, all of this expansion in property prices all around the world, Auckland included, Auckland specifically for various reasons, is basically being caused by monetary expansion, not through immigration or housing shortages or anything like that.
God,
Really
isn't it?
Yeah.
How do you remember all of that? I feel like a cucumber sitting here. You mean like I've got no bloody purpose and I don't know what the fuck is happening. But what you say makes sense.
It's good to be on a. It's good to be on.
You make complete sense, but I'm like, why don't I know all of this stuff? Like, why does no one tell anybody this?
Actually, so I wasn't really thinking about monetary system policies and all of that sort of thing. And actually, the reason that I got into business is my parents lost all their money in the 1987 share market crash, and I was 11 then. So that'll tell you how old I am. And so you would think that I would pay attention to financial crisis, but no, basically my parents losing their money in the 87 share market crash just made me very interested in business from, a teenager on. And so that's why I got into business. And then I made a lot of money starting Orcon, obviously. And then I basically retired at like 29. And then I sold Orcon in 2007. And then basically the next thing that happened is the 2008 financial crisis, and I was completely unprepared. So I ended up losing $4 or $5 million, as a lot of people did. Thankfully didn't lose everything. And since 2008, I've kind of been obsessed of like, well, hang on, what's actually going on? And, I was operating a business, but I was not understanding the global macroeconomic picture. But it's kind of like pulling a string on a sweater. The more that you learn, the more complicated it is, and it's this crazy thing. But the monetary system is yeah, when you start digging into it, it's actually completely insane, because it's all based on trust, and a lot of it is kind of imaginary fairy stuff. It's a little bit shocking when you start to kind of uncover something. But I'll
Just
sound
giving.
like a conspiracy theorist again.
No, you're sounding good. This is great. Melissa Matthews through the comments is saying you can comment on anything. You can ask CB anything. If you've just joined us, Seeby Woodhouse, entrepreneur, of course, tech millionaire. Yeah. Melissa Matthews, red light or green light, does anyone actually understand the new COVID traffic light system and transition from the old framework to the new? My question is, do you think this is an easier system to understand than the last system to understand? And do you think that'll translate to middle New Zealand?
Well, if people are asking the questions, then clearly it hasn't been that easy to understand. But like anything new, it takes people a little while to get through. So the old system of levels was basically how scared do we need to be that the virus has got out of control, and the goal is elimination. So when we're fairly certain that we are on the path to elimination, so we go to level 4, we eliminate the virus in the community, we get the R number below 1, the virus, because the thing about the virus is the virus either kills you or you kill the virus. So even if there was no vaccine, either you die when you get the virus and then the virus dies with you, or your immune system eventually kills the virus. There's no in between. That's one or the other. Now, in the middle time, the virus jumps to someone else. So the only way the virus can survive, because obviously if the virus kills the host, then the virus dies when you die, right? So the only way the virus can survive is jumping between the population, continually finding new people, and either being killed by their immune systems or, being transmitted. So that R number, or the transmissibility number, is the goal of the 4 levels was to try and get that under 0, and then the virus would die out because it wouldn't have anyone to jump to, and the living people's immune systems would overcome the virus, or would get the occasional death for someone that couldn't overtake it. But basically, because the R number, or the transmissibility of Delta, is so high, it's like 6, whereas the old one was a lot lower. It's very, very hard to do elimination. So we've had this massive lockdown in Auckland, and we basically haven't eliminated it. It keeps on popping up. We keep on getting little, transmissions. And so I think the government has realized that the economic damage has gone on too long, and we're now going to have to be like every other country and live with it. So the new system is basically red light, green light, orange light. It's how much load is there on the medical system. Are we in crisis, and that the doctors and nurses are, overworked and they can't do things? So when we're in red, it's like, okay, we need to be really careful. We need to be wearing masks everywhere. We need to, be super careful to try and, just dampen it down. But it's a system where COVID is going to be present all the time. So there's no more elimination strategy. And I think the new 3-level system makes sense in that context, that we're not trying to eliminate. We're just saying, how cautious are we being? How bad is it getting? And if it gets really out of control, then we're at red. But what we're saying is that we're basically still going to be open. And one of the reasons we're going to be open is because there's going to be a lot of vaccinated people who can have COVID and, be okay.
Yeah, okay. Hey, more important questions here. This is a toughie from Ange. Why are the shelves bare behind you, Seeby?
Okay, so I'm actually selling my farm in Manukau, and these shelves were at my other house, so this is my new house. So all I've got is like my Entrepreneur of the Year award and a few.
You're going to take those things, don't you? You've unpacked different stuff.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're a little bit uninteresting, but these shelving units were just moved into my office a couple of days ago, so I haven't got everything set up. But I found my awards and a few things, so there'll be impressive looking books and
excellent, lovely
monuments and certificates and things on there for next time I'm on the show.
Thank goodness for that. Hey, Benny boy, what have you got for us just quickly?
Something.
Oh, hang on. We'll just go to Ben. We'll come back to the candle. Sorry. Off you go, mate.
We've just had the Ashley Bloomfield just paged me on my pager. He's just sent me through a link, a website link. I believe he's sent it to you as well there, Thane.
Oh, yeah.
And this is basically the whole sort of Squid Games operation rules. The rules, I like to think of it as our own in teledrama.
Yeah, totally.
I'm the gangster guy with the tattoos. But yeah, anyway, that's it. It's all online. It's the COVID-19 framework. That's what you look up if you want to. They've got so many names for it, don't they? First, they were calling it the roadmap out of Auckland. It's like everyone knows how to get out of Auckland. We don't need a roadmap. Now they're calling it the traffic lights. It's like, am I sitting my learner's test here? Can I only drive between like 10 a.m. and 10 p.m.?
Feels like
So
it.
it's very fun. It's cool, and we don't know.
Thanks, matey. Awesome. Hey, Khan Hall says Khan's going. Luke is asking questions tonight. Oh yeah. I like what he asked if the girl's hair was blonde, green.
Khan, he hasn't been able to properly engage with the show after that. He came on again, but he was absolutely wanky. He told us all how sad he was about COVID, and then he kind of let it slip that he'd drunk 6 bottles of champagne celebrating selling a $4 million house. So then we didn't really feel sorry for him. And when he was hungover the next day, we gave him a bit of some teasing, and he was so hungover he had to leave. And he hasn't appeared yet. He hasn't skulked his way back onto our screens just yet. But I think it was a bit of a doozy. It was a bit of a doozy. He said he opened his car door and a bunch of KFC fell out the next day. And it's bad when that sort of shit happens. I mean, I've done worse, but
Another question here, CB. How do you think crypto will be taken on the banking institutes in the future?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. It's very interesting. It's very interesting what's happening with crypto. So obviously, Bitcoin broke through new highs the other day, and I think that part of the reason that crypto is going so gangbusters is because people really are losing faith in the monetary system, and the monetary system is essentially being abused. So when you have sound money based on real value, then things tend to do really well and countries thrive and that kind of thing. And so when a government starts putting their hand in the till and cheating the system a little bit, then things start to fall apart. So the US had very sound money up until about 1979, basically through the 70s. And at the end of the 70s and 79, there was the oil price shocks, and then OPEC kind of got together. And then by 1981, a lot of people won't remember this listening to the show, but interest rates went to 20%. The reason they went to 20% is they were trying to get on top of the horrendous inflation. And we're actually in a very similar situation to the 1970s from a monetary policy position at the moment. But the reason there was all those shocks is that the US had basically based their dollar on gold, and they were the reserve currency as they are now. But they didn't cheat the system too much. And so people that produced products got, money that was worth something, and it wasn't debased. But then in the 60s, the US had the Vietnam War, which was multi-trillion-dollar war even back then. They went to the moon, and they had a bunch of think big projects. And so basically they started going to huge amounts of debt. So other countries started saying, well, you're going into so much debt, we want you to pay us, and money is gold, so we want to redeem our US dollars for actual gold so that we feel secure. So what happened is Nixon at the time basically said, oh, no, we're going to go off the gold standard, and we are going to basically not pay our bills, and we will just print the money that we owe you. So instead of getting gold, you're just going to get US dollar paper. So what happened is there was this huge shock when the whole international community said, oh my God, the US dollar is worthless. But the thing is that there wasn't actually a better option. And so since sort of 1970, 1980, the US dollar became the world's reserve currency as a hangover from World War II. And the main reason was because the US didn't get bombed to oblivion like every other country. So like Japan got nuked, London got bombed by the Germans, Germany got flattened by, the Allies. every country was bombed. But all that happened to America was that they had Pearl Harbor. They lost 3,000 men. Other than that, the actual America was completely isolated from the war. So they produced these huge factories to make aircraft and tanks and all those kind of things. And then after the war, they turned out Harley-Davidson motorcycles and automobiles and all this kind of thing. So the US was a very powerful, productive country that didn't have all the damage of the other countries. So their dollar became the world's reserve currency. And then when they said, okay, it's not backed by gold, everyone freaked out and inflation went crazy and things. But then everyone said, well, we don't have a better option, so we're just going to keep on using the US dollar. But what's happened is the US has subsequently, since 1970, abused that privilege more and more and more. So if you think about in New Zealand, if we want to buy some things from China, we make some lambs, we grow some trees, we earn money, we get US dollars, and then we take those US dollars, we spend them in China, but we've got to do a whole lot of work, and the Chinese have to do a whole lot of work. If the US wants microwaves and TVs and things from China, they just print up a whole lot of money and send it to China. And so that's why the US standard of living for the last 30, 40 years, or 50 years, since 1970 now, is basically 3 times better than all of the rest of the world, because they get a free ride. They don't actually have to pay for anything. They just create, dollars to pay for it, whereas everyone else in the world has to trade US dollars. Now, the US has basically just got so greedy and it's so out of control that it's basically this huge Ponzi scheme. So when Obama was in office and we had the 2008 global financial crisis, the US national debt was $10 trillion. Now the US national debt is $30 trillion in only a few years. So Trump basically went absolutely ballistic. And basically what we're seeing is the likes of, Venezuela, their dollar went to whatever. I mean, a lot of you will know that in like 1930s Germany, you had to have a wheelbarrow of $20 trillion notes, because what happens when you get into inflation or hyperinflation, the public starts to lose trust in money. And then as they lose trust, things have to start costing more. And it turns into this vicious cycle where people put prices up and then money gets created, and then people are freaking out that their money's not buying as much as it used to. And then it turns into this runaway problem that the government can't control. So the US is right on the verge of a hyperinflationary episode, and it's possibly going to be extremely ugly. I don't know what's going to happen, but the debt pile. I mean, basically in the last 8 months, 50% of all the US dollars that have ever existed have been created in the last 6 to 8 months. So we're kind of on the verge of some sort of global meltdown, but I don't know exactly what's going to happen or how. But certainly it's a big problem, because in 2008, we had a big financial crisis, which was basically the housing bubble imploding. And when that happened, interest rates were 5%, and they lowered interest rates globally to sort of 0. And obviously, if you don't have to pay interest, that makes your life a lot easier. So the rescue package for the 2008 financial crisis was lowering interest rates by 5%. That allowed everyone to take a breather and then kind of recover. But this time around, interest rates are already 0, because they're still 0 from the 2008 financial crisis, because we never recovered from that. Now inflation is going out of control. The US is spending out of control. Their deficits are going out of control. The only way they're going to be able to fix that is to raise interest rates, which will attract money in, because people will get a return on their investment instead of cash outflows. And then basically, but the problem is that we'll have, the next time we have a recession, which we may, like a global financial crisis, which we may be just on the cusp of, like right now. I mean, it could be kicking off tomorrow. It could have already started to kick off. I don't know. Like last time it was Goldman Sachs. This time it could just be something that bursts, and all of a sudden we're in a.
What are the signals? What are the signals that you're looking for?
The signals are terribly everywhere. I mean, I sort of look at the financial markets, and the thing is that it's been horrible even since before COVID, was a thing. So for the last 3 years, I mean, normally you tend to have a bit of a correction and a bit of a boom and a bust every 10 years. Well, the 2008 financial crisis was 13 years ago now, so we're 3 years overdue for a big financial crisis. I mean, we basically had the 1987 share market crash, the 2001 dot-com bust, the 2008 global financial crisis. There was the Asian financial crisis in 1997. So sort of every 10 years or so, there's a big crisis, but we haven't had anything for 13 years. And one of the reasons we haven't had anything is because they're going money printing into overdrive. So either the US dollar is going to get destroyed because they're going to print so much of it that it's just going to become worthless, and we're going to see inflation on the street, or they're going to try and get on top of it. But by getting on top of it, what they're going to have to do is increase interest rates, and they probably won't be 5%. They'll probably go to 10%. And if they go to 10%, a lot of people are going to go bankrupt and not be able to pay their mortgages. And that's what tends to tip over the problem. So the Federal Reserve and the global banking community is in a horrible conundrum, because they have to raise interest rates to get on top of this inflation debt problem. But when they raise interest rates, everyone's going to be hurting, because everyone's used to paying absolutely nothing and living off cheap credit, and then the financial system's going to implode. So, long answer short, that's probably why people are looking at crypto going, well, hey, we like the fact that this isn't actually run by the government, and government money is backed by nothing anymore. There's no government backed money by gold or silver. So if government money is worthless and the US is just printing it into oblivion, then why don't we go for digital money, which is worthless, but we all agree is worth something and isn't going to be printed into oblivion because it's a little bit more fair. And so maybe the outcome of this next crash will be that the world will adopt Bitcoin as a global currency and will have an equal, kind of thing. So
got a message here from sorry, off you go, Sophia.
Big Logie said signals of big financial holdings dropping big stocks, causing a rift. And I think we saw that when with the divorce from what's that little dweeb who made something? He's got the big glasses and he loves the old nuclear power. What's his name? Not Steve Jobs, the other one. And his wife, and they cure people. Yeah, Gates. Yeah. Those two separating so he could dump a whole bunch of stock. And then also with Bezos, so there was talk that those two separations or divorces were ways of them dumping stocks and getting rid of stuff. Have you heard about that?
It's an interesting theory. I mean, I think that if you're collectively the two richest men on the planet, then it's probably pretty hard to keep a marriage going long term, because more money, more problems. I mean, it does, if your wife is kind of starting to get sick of your shit after 20 years and she thinks, hang on, if I just tell him to go F himself, I'll get $30 billion. It's a big motivation to go and do that. I mean, a lot of marriages don't last, in modern times. If you've got a $30 billion incentive to tell your husband to go take a jump, it's a pretty good incentive. Yeah, so, I'm not 100% sure, but you could be right. I mean, who knows?
I don't know about that, because they both of those women actually pledged a hell of a lot of their money being given away afterwards. So I'm not sure that it was necessarily a financial gain thing, and they already had that money. But yeah, I'm not sure that it's as Khan says, I heard that one, Sophia. Conspiracy sees all. See.
Hey, just quickly, Ange says if you won lotto, you got that $42 million and you want to double or triple it, would you buy crypto, NFTs, or shares in Pfizer?
Well, Ray Dalio, who's the world's #1 investor, a lot of people know the name Warren Buffett. A lot less people know the name Ray Dalio. But Ray Dalio is the investor who's returned the highest rate of return per dollar invested for investors. So Warren Buffett's done enormously well in creating total wealth, but Ray Dalio's percentage returns are actually better. So Bridgewater Associates, he's got a great lot of YouTube videos, and he's got a book out called Principles and that sort of stuff. Anyway, his secret to achieving amazing results is basically diversification. So I attended like an online seminar of his, and he basically said, look, any asset class is going to probably have a major correction. If you're solely in property, then at some point there's going to be a correction where the value of your house loses 30 to 50% in a property crash or whatever. But if you have, some shares, some property, some crypto, some gold, some silver, whatever, then overall you're going to get an adjusted return that's better than, lots of little buckets. So if you're an investor, then diversification is the #1 secret to making money. But sometimes it makes sense to have all your eggs in one basket. For example, if you're a business owner. So if you are starting up a .com company or something, you want to be focused on that 100% and get a result out of that asset. You don't want to be distracting yourself, managing all sorts of little things. So, the professional investor, does diversification and hedging and often matches asset classes together so that if one goes down, the other one will go up. For example, when inflation runs riot, gold and silver are a really popular hedge. So, a lot of people who aren't, say, so much into crypto or maybe they want a true store of money, I think people are going to go back to gold and silver because it's been money for 5,000 years.
Yeah.
But in 5,000 years, in 5,000 years' time, we're probably not going to have Bitcoin. But in 5,000 years' time, a cube of gold is still going to be worth, probably a cube of gold. And the amazing thing about gold is that if you actually look back in history, it's pretty much had no inflation the whole time. So it's literally, it's not an asset class, like it is money, and it's a permanent store of value. So there's an interesting tale I heard. I can't remember which book I read it in, but if you were to go back and be a Roman soldier in the Roman Empire, like in the time of Jesus Christ, if you wanted to buy, a suit of armor to go to warfare and, like a nice, some battle clothing, that clothing would have cost you about 1 ounce of gold. And if you are a stockbroker in New York and you want to go and buy a nice tailored Brioni suit or something, that will cost you about 1 ounce of gold. So for the professional person in your time, your clothing item for 3,000 years has been an ounce of gold, and it probably will be an ounce of gold in another 3,000 years. So I like gold. I've got a little bit, but,
Very good.
A couple of things there. One, I feel like we need some advice for someone like me who has not got any idea really about hedge funds and has just recently joined Sharesies. So we need some layman's terms. We need some Sharesies advice in here. I just bought some Rocket Lab, so that was pretty exciting. I don't know if that's counted as diversifying my portfolio at this stage, but I feel like 1 or 2 shares is a good start to just, get in the door. But secondly, we've got some comments here. One was making me giggle. Sam says, Sophia, they say that a man's wealth can boost his out of 10 attractiveness by 2 points. Could I rate Seeby as a janitor first and then with his current wealth?
10 out of 10 handsome at both times. There's that Marilyn Monroe quote which says that you might not marry a girl just because she's pretty, just like you might not marry a man because he's rich, but doesn't it help?
Yeah.
Exactly. Dan Orks is
Absolutely.
Dan Orks, can you bust out a tune on your piano, please?
What piano?
I could, but I can't carry my computer all the way down to my piano room, unfortunately.
Fair enough.
Maybe I can set it up next time.
Set up there next time. Andrew, isn't success to be happy with what you already have? Why is money the goal? You could up to your throat and diarrhea just as long as you are. Yeah,
well,
okay.
I don't know what that comment is. It seems a little bit pornographic.
Yeah, a touch. Sorry, Sophia?
I do think, though, it is, money does have a purpose and it does give you choices and freedom to make the choices that you want to make in your life. And it is important, but it's not everything, right? So, and it's getting quite complicated. You can have this one, but that one might burst in a bubble and you could have that thing and that's going to go down. I mean, what goes up, for God's sake? What's a good, safe bet? Are you thinking just gold?
Yeah, I mean, I missed out on a lot of the crypto boom. I made a tiny bit of money, but I mean, I think I said last time I was on the show, I should have been a crypto billionaire because I read about Bitcoin in 2008 and sort of wrote it off as an oddity. So haven't been a big investor and should have been. So, you can't get it right all of the time. But look, I think that I just think diversification is the key. But I suspect that all of the instability that we're seeing in the 2008 financial crisis, the housing boom, all of that sort of stuff is coming from a lack of sound monetary policy. So as I say, all of the crashes, the 87 crash, the 1997 Asian financial crash, all of those are basically ripples of pressure forming through the system and largely being caused by the Federal Reserve printing money and then using it as they see fit, funding the US's $1 trillion military budget and kind of borrowing from the rest of the world, being a bit sneaky. And so, when that happens, the US is a little bit richer than the rest of the world, and it's a little bit unfair. And then the wealthy people in the US are a little bit wealthier than the poor people, and it's a little bit unfair. So, I mean, if you think about what's happened over the last 13 years since the global financial crisis, there was this huge financial crisis, which was largely triggered by too much easy credit, right? So basically what happened is that Clinton actually overturned a 1929 directive called the Glass-Steagall Act. And the Glass-Steagall Act had the goal of separating merchant banks from commercial banks in the US, or merchant banks. So basically you had like Goldman Sachs would do things like shares, but they'd be prohibited from lending on, property. And then you'd have like Bank of America would lend on, safe things like property. And so in 1997, Clinton basically overturned that. And so all of the banks in the US started merging, and the merchant banks bought big shareholdings in the traditional banks. And then what they did is they wanted to encourage, they basically said, we need a product which is like, we say it's low risk, but then it's really high return, so then it's really attractive. So they created those things called collateralized debt obligations, which was basically, bundles of mortgages instead of a single mortgage, and then sold those to like the Canadian, mutual fund and the New Zealand government and, all these kind of things. And said,
that's
look,
what that movie was based on.
This is all like AAA rated debt, but you get a high rate of interest as well. So it seemed like there was this win-win. But then what happened is that the products were so successful that they ran out of mortgages. And so the merchant banks who were selling these CDOs said to their partners or co-companies, hey, go out and sell more mortgages. We need more mortgages to roll into these CDOs because we're making so much money. So then all the banks in the US were doing crazy things like, strippers in Vegas had like 6 houses because you could buy 110% mortgage where you buy $1 million house and you borrow $1.1 million and you don't have to have any proof of income. And then you get $100,000 to buy a car and a TV set. And then if it doesn't work out, you just hand your keys back and there's no bankruptcy or anything. So basically the whole 2008 property bubble was caused by too much easy credit. But the solution to too much easy credit, the solution to the 2008 financial crisis was even more easy credit. So now we've gone from like 5% interest rate being standard to like 0% interest rate, 1 or 2% interest rate being standard. And of course, if you're used to paying 5%, like say you earn $100,000 a year, you can afford whatever mortgage. Now, if your interest bill is halved, you can spend twice as much. So then when you go to auction and you want to buy someone's house, you pay more. And that's why prices have been rising in Auckland more and more and more, because interest rates were so low, so people could borrow more. But when interest rates go the other way, it's going to be really, really painful. And then that's when asset prices come down. But essentially, who's benefited from the global inflation in assets? Well, it's people who own assets. If houses are going up in value or monetary terms, it's all the boomers and all the people who already own property and all the wealthy people who make more and more and more money. So the people who benefit from cheap money is not actually poor people or people on Main Street. It's people like Donald Trump who borrow, people like the US government who borrow, people who have assets and land who borrow so they can borrow those things cheap. So actually, if we want a fair society and fair trading and a stable economy, what we actually need is a reasonably high rate of interest. And then people who want to save, so if you have a couple who's in university and they want to save for their first house, if they are getting a high rate of interest in the bank, that can incentivize them to save and that can help them. And also high interest rates means that people can't afford big mortgages, so the price of things comes down. So when we have this correction, it's probably going to end up in a more egalitarian society. The monetary policy of the US for the last 50 years has created massive inequality in the US and all around the world. And we're now seeing the extreme end game where, monetary policy is causing these, multi-hundred mega trillionaires, billionaires. I mean, they're talking about Bezos and Musk being the first trillionaires within about 5 years at current rates or less. Both of them are worth, 250 billion, which is insane. But they've only been getting richer through this time because it's asset inflation. If you own the assets already and they inflate, then you make more money. So
Good Hey, I just want to address this one here from Big Logie, who's been having a hell of a time watching the show tonight. With AWS setting up Amazon, isn't it? Setting up a data center in New Zealand. How do you think it will affect the commercial hosting market and CDN-wise for ISPs? Do you think it will be a good addition to the network here in New Zealand?
Yeah, so Voyager has a product, Voyager Cloud, which competes with Amazon Web Services. We have about 700 servers that we farm and feed and water and monitor for people. Obviously, cloud computing is very, very popular these days. So instead of having like a server in your office, everything's on Dropbox or servers that ISPs or Amazon maintains. Amazon's been very successful. They're almost kind of predatory in terms of how they go into a market and how much money they invest. So Amazon's basically said they're going to spend $10 billion in New Zealand. I don't know how you could spend $10 billion on data center services in New Zealand, but if they do spend that kind of money, it's going to probably crush Spark and Telecom and Vodafone and us and everything, because it's just a huge investment. So it's not necessarily super good for Voyager or me personally, but for the country, if they do invest that kind of money, it's probably not a bad thing. And that's where it's going. I suppose one of the things we do have to bear in mind is these mega data centers consume huge amounts of energy and obviously contribute a massive amount to global warming. I mean, most people sort of think of the internet as this like, airy fairy cloud thing, but they don't realize every single person who has an iPhone, their photos and things are living on live hot servers that are consuming power and
wearing away
power of an oven to keep all of their photos, kind of online in the cloud. It's not sort of free energy. So these mega data centers are kind of massive, and I think their power consumption is an issue. So it would be good if Microsoft and AWS make a real effort to, do solar and that kind of thing as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, man, what a chat. Thank you very much for your time. It's been super good. I like some people are going to get rotten drunk tonight, and then others are going to learn some stuff. And I reckon we're in a time now where you get out there and learn as much as you can. And I love, Sophia, just asking the obvious questions. Sometimes you get a very
that's
non-obvious answer.
That's the thing about the monetary system is it's the more you learn, the more crazy it is. And have we got much more time, or are we basically out? So one of the things that I didn't realize for a long time, and I almost couldn't believe it, is that banks don't actually have any money. When you become a bank, you simply get a permission to create money. So, for example, if you go to a bank and get a mortgage, like ASB doesn't have money sitting in an account or in a vault that they actually lend you. So when they create a mortgage, you have like your checking account, which has $0, and then you have the debt, which is like, $1 million. So say you borrow $1 million, they basically put $1 million in your checking account, which is like an asset to you and a liability to them. And then they have a mortgage, which is also $1 million. But with double entry book counting, those two things are created at the same time. And then you take the $1 million cash in your account, which is a positive thing you have, and you have the debt of the loan, which together, if you pay that loan off with that money the next day, they disappear because, no debt. And then you take that $1 million in your checking account and you send that to another bank, and then the banks have debt between them. But essentially, if you want to start a bank in New Zealand, you need about $30 million. That $30 million is basically just kind of like an amount to show the Reserve Bank that you're a serious organization. You can then go and lend out 10 times your principal or create 10 times as much money by getting a banking license. So if you have $30 million and you start a bank in New Zealand, you can create $300 million of loans and then charge interest on those loans, and you don't have to have $300 million. So, but you can't loan more than that. And then of course you're a small bank. And then of course,
why didn't you?
Seeby, can you borrow that from somewhere? Can you get some cheap money from America?
Well, I did think that the I'm a business person. I've got a dozen businesses and I work my ass off and all that kind of thing. But creating money and then creating money out of thin air, getting a license to do that, and then charging interests to people for the use of the money that you just created and didn't actually take any work seems like a hell of a good idea. For the lazy man's way of doing it. But the other thing is, of course, I thought I could charge less than the banks. But the big banks, of course, don't like any competition. And if you go into any city in the world and you look at the biggest buildings, the tallest buildings, those are the people that generally have the most money. And most of the time it's banks and financial institutions. So, they're sort of making so much money and they've got so much marketing money that it's sort of difficult. As I say, if you become a bank in New Zealand with the Reserve Bank, you could only be a small bank. And then, it's hard because you're not allowed to lend out an infinite amount of money. You have limits and things, and then the reporting and all that kind of thing. So it's not easy to get into the club. But obviously, in the world, there's 4 billion people that don't have access to clean water or sanitation or even kind of money. A lot of those people are now starting to get cell phones and things. So there's the agrarian type of people, and then that's like 50% of the planet or more, and they're sort of outside the system. And then you have like the worker class, which is like the blue collar workers and people who are employed, people who work for companies, people who work for governments, all those sort of things. And they have one financial world that they live in, and then above that you have the business owners who kind of control assets and move things around. And the difference between a business owner and a blue collar worker is that a blue collar worker has to earn their money and then pay tax and then spend what they have left, whereas a business is reversed. So, for example, if you're a person and you want to put $100 of gas in your car, you have to earn $150. You have money taken out from your pay packet, PAYE or whatever. So you pay tax 33%, and then you put $100 of gas in your car. But it's actually cost you $150 to put $100 of gas in your car. But if you're a business, you go and put $100 of gas in your car, you claim a 33% tax deduction, and the government gives you a tax rebate because you can claim expenses. So for a business, $100 of gas only costs $67. So for a person, it costs $150. And for a business owner, it costs $67. So it's nearly a 2.5, 3 times difference. And that's why oftentimes, business owners do well. Now, in times like, it's not business owners are not obviously hideous, greedy people, and we create jobs and there's a lot of risk, and oftentimes it's horrible hard work and you can lose your shirt and things. So it's not all a bed of roses. But the global monetary system is a little bit tipped in favor. All of the tax laws that have been created over hundreds of years, it's like if you have a business, you're taking risk, but you kind of get to pay, you get to claim expenses and things, you get to pay a little bit less tax. And then, of course, above all of that, there's the real 1%, and I'm not part of the real 1%. I've had to, work and grind and things my whole life. And the 1% is all the wealthy European families. I mean, you go to Monaco and things, and there's these huge $10 million, $100 million boats, and you're like, who in the world has all of this money? Well, that's the European banking class, and the banking class gets to create the money and charge interest on it every now. So it's kind of like a form of serfdom. So, we're in the system where there's this whole interlocking monetary system that everyone kind of agrees is there, but no one really knows why. And so we're all living in this construct. But actually the banking classes, they charge interest on money that they don't actually have. They have a license. When you're a bank, you have a license to create money out of thin air when you make a loan. But there's limitations and there's agreements on, these are the big banks and these are the small banks, and this is how much you get to do, and this is how much your capital is, and all this kind of thing. And then, of course, every now and again, banks take risks and then they lose their shirts and then they get their license taken away. So it's kind of like, a bank having a banking license is like you can make so much money. But
so you saying, so if we crowdfunded $30 million, could you get the paperwork together to get a banking license together? And we just give it a nod?
Maybe. I mean, if there's all of a sudden a groundswell, everyone's like, let's have a Seeby bank and only pay like 2% interest or something. I mean, it could be doable. I've done a lot of research on it, but I'm not an expert. And one of the things is obviously the more you learn about it, then the more complicated it gets, because there's all these things you didn't understand and this kind of thing. But it would certainly be a fun project. I did kind of think that maybe I could use my Voyager customer base of 30,000 people and then say, okay, we want to have like a Voyager bank, and if everyone puts in $1,000 or $2,000, then you can have your mortgage with us and that kind of thing. But I don't know whether, I've never experimented whether there'd be like a groundswell of support. Or
the more you think about it and the way you're saying it, and it totally makes sense. I mean, everything you see is, is checking out, and that's where the big money is, and it's only $30 million away. I would say get yourself a banking license immediately. And then just make some.
We are recording this. It will be on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, or you can go through our website, talkback.co.nz, and scroll down, click watch, and it'll take you to the YouTube page, and you
Yeah.
can watch them all later. Sorry, just in case you were trying to leave.
This episode will be loaded up there tonight. This is a good answer. It's great.
Yeah. So I mean, I suppose the people like me that have researched the topic of banking often end up getting a little bit disgusted at some of the practices that goes on. But I suppose that's one of the reasons that Bitcoin is going crazy and crazy. So one option is for me to start a bank, and I'm happy to do it. If everyone begs me to start a bank, I'll start Seeby Bank, all right? But
I love how it's like Westpac and you got Woodhouse, or something like that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, well, the trouble is, I mean, there are small banks, so credit societies are a little bit similar. So, mutual societies and things. So there's like the Nelson Building Society, I think there's and I think there's one New Zealand bank like TSB or whatever. I think they're still going.
Heartlands.
Yeah, but I mean, they basically get crushed by the big Australian banks because they get outmarketed, and they, when you have a small amount of initial startup capital, then you can only lend out 10 times that initial startup capital, and then you have to redeploy capital. So, I mean, a lot of people just go, oh, why would I want to be with like TSB? It's some small crappy bank. But they're obviously, most of the time their interest rates are good. They got friendly people and they employ New Zealanders and things. But
and if you branded yourself completely out of the box, like even if you just went like whatever your customer base is, and you just angled straight into that, and you're like, okay, I only need like 0.05% of people because I can only afford to like house that much in terms of lending or whatever it was, and you just marketed to that and pinpointed it down, surely that you could do well. And then if you've lent 10 times what you've got, can you then reapply with more capital if you had it?
So this is one of the things that I get confused about. So I won't talk out of school, but when you talk to monetary theorists, they talk about this like M0, M1, and M2, and like M0 is like the money that is created by like the central bank, and then M1 is like the multiplier of money that's like lent out by the other banks, and effectively you're not allowed to have your ratio of like M1 and M2 depending on like each country sets their own thing. So in New Zealand it's about 10-1. So banks are basically allowed to lend out 10 times their startup capital. But obviously as they charge interest, once they get that interest on loans, then that interest as it's paid back, like when you pay back the original loan, so someone borrows $1 million, if they pay back that $1 million, that disappears, as I said, because the loan was created and then the money was created in an account. So when you pay that back, the money comes back in and then it cancels out against the loan, and the money and the loan disappear. But what happens is the interest that was charged then becomes your primary capital, and then you can lend that out as primary money. So
you would essentially reinvest the interest.
Yeah. Now, obviously, the difficulty is that if say, for example, if there was like a CB bank or a Voyager bank, and we had like the best fees and the fairest service, then if we only charged say 0.5% to everyone would love us. But then our primary capital would never grow that fast, so then we wouldn't be able to lend out, create new loans because we wouldn't have the capital. So the banks that do well, charge high interest, and then they get all that money that they can lend out again because they've got that base capital.
I wonder if you could make that like a limited thing and make it like really hot, because we've only got like 300 mortgages for $1 million that we can give out, and you're going to be one of the lucky. I don't know if the math is right on that, guys, but bear with me. Yeah. Could you make that like
I'm sure I'm going to get the Reserve Bank governor or something calling me out. What are you talking about? All this stuff on the radio,
Well, it's bloody interesting, and hands up who wants you to start a bank. I'd say let's do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But you know what? I reckon you wouldn't have a problem with fundraising. I think people would put in.
Yeah, well, I suppose the one thing that I'm kind of good at is being a bit of a lone wolf and just kind of sticking to my own business and running my businesses and never kind of doing any PR or talking to people. But I spent years reading financial books and kind of memorizing stuff and all that kind of thing, and then just never talked to anybody. It's just in my head. So it's good to actually kind of get a bunch of stuff out and talk to people about things.
Amazing.
Both times on the show, we've somehow ended up talking about money a little bit, but it's not the only thing I know about.
No, exactly. There's a piano.
Yeah,
We'll do
there's
that.
awards.
I'll play you some piano next time.
Yeah, that'll be great. Well, next week, let's do it again next week. Thank you very much for your time. We're do some open line talk back now. So let's book you in for another.
If you and enjoy our conversation.
Yeah, no, it's great.
Yeah. Hey, any chance you could sponsor Sophia's some fiber? She's still running.
I'm sure I can help out. Well,
Thanks.
we've got to resolve her issues, right? So.
Oh my God, you guys, it's so bad. I'm on my data. I'm on my phone right now. Like I've streamed it. What is that? Where you like put your phone into your? Yeah, I've hotspotted. Jeez,
unbelievable.
Oh well, at least Spark or Vodafone 4G seems to be working reasonably well for you. So
yeah. That's true. That's true.
Just about.
So Big Logie says, "What over a hotspot? I know. I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to try and WhatsApp in someone, and it's going to be gone. My plan's going to be used up to smithereens, but it's worth it because this chat's been fab." What else have we got going on here?
So what I want to do is we're handing over. So we've co-hosted it in because you needed to go and do your stuff, and then I'm going to watch Succession.
Right. Okay, we're leaving.
And so we're handing it over to Buddy Boy Benny Mack. So that's pretty much the show. Yeah.
All right.
So he's logged into the system, so I can go.
Good to see you again, guys. Am I hopping off or am I staying on, or what am I doing?
Oh well, I'm going.
Welcome to stay. It's completely up to you.
You'll be alone with Ben.
I've got my IPA.
There you go.
All right, so Ben, you're okay. So guys, I'm hopping off now. So thank you very much for your time, Seeby. Amazing.
Thanks, Thane. Good to see you as always.
Yes, good to see you
guys next week.
See ya.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much, Sophia. Great show. That show just rated off the hook, mate. That was excellent.
Nice. How have you got? Can you see the numbers of viewers and things online or something?
Yeah. I've got some numbers up here, and I'm always just hyping it up.
Yeah.
Encouraging it, and I've also got my my latest graphic there, which I've integrated into the system. What I'd love it is if anyone wants to call up, we've got that link. I'm going to put it in chat again.
You're on mute,
Thane. You're muted, brother. Yeah.
Still on mute, Thane.
Yeah, are you using an external audio device?
Is it me? Hello?
Yep, gotcha.
Yeah. Hey, I'm off, so I'm not on the phones. So yeah, I'm gonna.
All good, bro. I'm gonna put up this link here if people want to call in. Okay, cheers, brother. Thanks, Thano. Yeah, if anyone wants to call in, there's the link. It's in chat, and we can get you on the line, and we can get you in the hot seat, and we can take some talk back. Wild stuff happening at the moment as far as I guess stabilization of society, stabilization of the stock of the supply chain, and also a huge mass unemployment, and also mass job vacancies. I hear that's what's happening in America. You've got people that are getting mass layoffs for no jab, no job. And then you're getting this other problem where people are getting all these stimulus checks coming in, and their attitude to work has changed, and they're saying, I'm not going to do that low-value job and be treated like an asset. I'm just going to stay home and keep cashing the check.
I mean, the real problem that we've got globally is governments don't actually have any money. That's a complete misnomer. And so governments only have the power to, make policy and move money around. and it's always the people that have the power, and it's always the people that have the money. So when a government gives you something, they have to take away, they give you something in one hand, and they have to either take it off someone else, or they have to redistribute things. So with all of the stimulus checks, as I say, the only way that a government can get funds is three ways. One is through direct taxation, which is the honest way. The other is by going into debt, which countries all around the world are doing. And the other way is inflation. And inflation's really what's sort of kicking off. So all of the COVID vaccines, all of the stimulus checks, we're all going to have to pay for that ourselves down the line. But if you actually look at the official stats, from the US, they're saying inflation's 5%. I think inflation in the US is more like 20%, and those price increases is what's basically paying for the stimulus. So you're getting a handout check, but then that handout check's eventually going to be worthless.
It goes back into the economy. Interesting stuff you're saying there about the true price of inflation, or value of inflation. And of course, let's just cross over to Jamie Oxley here in Queensland. How is life on the ground, or rather, how's life underwater down under?
Oh yeah, we're going all right. We've been doing a loop tonight and getting on the jambroos, so to speak.
Yeah. Now you're talking.
That is an amazing mullet, mate. Nice. You got
the jambroos. Oh, cousin.
That looks like it would only be good for killing brain cells and degreasing engines.
I like to think it's a bit better than that, but yeah. When I give it away to anyone, I tell them if they don't want to, if they don't.
Sorry, mate. I'm just trying to figure out this system. How to switch between cameras. Yeah, bro. What do you tell them about your jumbo there, mate, and your mullet?
I say if they don't like it, they can use it for bench cleaner. Or sanitizer.
It's a heavy spirit. It's a paint stripper.
What's it made of? Potatoes?
And we got Jono. He's here. The other side
looking like large.
Yeah, the other one had a mullet too, but he's gone inside, so.
Oh, there we go. I figured it out. Sheesh. Okay, cool. Sorry, I was a little bit scratching my head there. Okay,
no, you're all right.
Awesome. So what sort of temperature are you running the spa pool at there, buddy?
We have got 35.6. Right. Yeah, 35.6 at the moment.
Oh, 35.6. Yeah, that's pretty good with the little one in there. You don't really want him to have heat stroke.
Yeah, apparently the salesman got me on the pitch. So apparently it can run 40 degrees open with 10 people in it or something. I don't really know, but yeah, it sounded good to me, so I bought it, you know.
Yes, we have got the host of the show, the naming rights host, actually. How you doing? Can you hear me?
I just saw Jamie and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to go and say hi. Jamie, you're not on the truck. What's happening? And who is this cute little person with you? Hi. How's it going?
We got John, so yeah. I got home at lunchtime today, so chilling out.
Oh, what
nice.
have you got there, mate? A little truck.
What time is it here? Yeah, he's got this little. Where's your other truck? Have you crashed it? Yeah, what is it? 7:30 at the moment, so it's not. 7:20. Sorry.
Oh, the night is young. The night is young.
Yeah, the night is young. Yeah, and there's this other.
That one.
Have you got any questions for Seeby? By any chance, did you catch the show?
Yeah, it was good. I was watching it, and next year we're going to start saving to buy a second house. But that was all very interesting because I was kind of like, oh yeah, what you said about interest rates when they go up, the rich people benefit more than the poor people, or the poorer people, as you like to say. I found that interesting.
No, it's actually the other way around. So when interest rates go up, poor people actually benefit, and wealthy people benefit from interest rates being low, which is what's been happening, which is why this world super rich has been getting richer and richer and richer. So when when interest rates are high, it obviously encourages saving, and that's good for people that are conservative and have a little bit of money in the bank. When interest rates are low, that's good for people that are loaded up with debt, and the people that are loaded up with debt are normally wealthy people like Trump that have billions of dollars and money they've borrowed that they don't have to pay back. So whether you're a country or an individual or a business, low interest rates are good for you. But if you're not a country or a business, then you want high interest rates so that you can actually save some money, so you can save for a deposit. And the higher the interest rate, the less affordable things become, and so the prices come down. So actually the man on the street wants high interest rates, wealthy people want low interest rates, and that's kind of what's been happening.
Yeah, it's interesting because rents, because I'm in a new subdivision, there's only a house just over there. We've been here 4 years, and when 2 years just before COVID, a house just down the road got valued. The 2 years we've been in here valued for $10,000 more than what they built it, which was their landscaping, and then now they just sold that for $150,000. So it went up $100,000 or $150,000 in the space of since COVID started, which blew my mind.
Yeah, Australia is actually a little bit more reasonable. I'm every time I meet a real estate agent anywhere in the world, they always subscribe me to their personal newsletter, and I'm too lazy most of the time to unsubscribe. So I've met a few real estate agents in the Gold Coast when I had a look at some houses, and in Gold Coast, Brisbane and Melbourne, I noticed that you can kind of buy a house for about 500,000 Aussie. You can't buy like a dilapidated flat in New Zealand for that anymore. So I have a friend that tried to sell their house last year and had a target price of $2 million. They just sold it and got $3.4 million in 1 year, which is kind of unheard of. But New Zealand is out of control. I mean, house price affordability is just a disaster. So we're sort of a ticking time bomb waiting to happen. And when interest rates rise, which they're basically starting to do now, depending on how high they go, there's a lot of people on floating rates. And of course, if you've been paying 2% interest and that's all you can afford, and then interest rates go to 10%, then you're going to be bankrupt. Then you're going to have to sell your house. When you sell your house, other people are going to sell their houses, and then prices are going to fall. So falling prices is going to be good for people to get into the market, but it's not going to be good for people that have a mortgage at the moment. So there's kind of going to be like a grand reset. But there's a lot of millennials who have no hope whatsoever of getting any kind of property. So they're going to be really happy when prices fall and the bank gives them a good rate of interest. So, raising interest rates is good for some people and not good for others. But I think it's necessary from where we are because we're heading for like a global meltdown.
Yeah, it's crazy because when we built this, we only needed 370,000, and we needed 13,000 deposit, and Westpac were willing to give us a personal loan, and then loan the 98% or something, 97%. But we didn't end up doing that because I had a pretty good job. I could just work. I could pretty much save $1,000 a week for 13 weeks, and then we built the house,
Yeah.
But then I guess there's incentives here too. Like you get $20,000 for a first homeowners grant. That comes as soon as the slab's poured. That just comes straight off your mortgage. So that helped out huge,
Yeah, Australia definitely seems to be a lot more affordable. And it's for a number of reasons. So New Zealanders are suffering. It's very difficult for a young couple in New Zealand to buy their first home now.
Yeah, well, that's why we moved, because I've been in here probably about 10 years now, and I was dairy farming in Wairuku, and then I did that for about 2 years. About a year, sorry, and I was getting $400 and a house, and even back then we were struggling. And what really done it for me was we were at the local supermarket. The farm owner was doing her shopping, and she was by herself pushing 2 full trolleys around. And there's me and the one calculator trying to work out how to make ends meet. And I was just like, you got to be fucking joking me, like it's a joke. Because I was there, basically it was me and the owner that we didn't have any workers. So I was doing it, and I was just like, man, this isn't a life. We're living off $400 a week, it's not a life for anyone. Getting 1 week off a month, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, we live in a strange time because obviously food production is extremely important. None of us will be alive without food. If you go back 100 years, probably 60% of the entire world population and 60% of people's time was involved in making food, producing food, shipping food around. I mean, humans are basically interested about waking up, going to sleep, and eating, and so food's very important. But with machinery and fertilizer and all this kind of things, we've been able to get the number of people involved in food production down to sort of 1% of the population. So actually, like 99% of us are doing completely useless stuff like web design and pushing things around and accounting and all that kind of thing. But actually, it's not really involved in what it is to be alive. So we've sort of become a bit disconnected from the food chain and the planet. I mean, all you really need is food, water, a place to sleep, and that kind of thing. But the vast majority of humanity is involved in things that have nothing to do with food production. And we've of basically, driven down food to such a commodity that, good, honest people like farmers, really struggle to make a buck, which is unfortunate. So it would be good to sort of see a return to, farming and food production as sort of the valuable things that they are.
And a big problem that's occurring is you're getting all this sort of, as we were talking about earlier, the breakdown in the global supply chain, and that's affecting food as well. I know in America they're starting to experience a bit of food shortage, and that's when people get really desperate, and that ramps up other areas of sort of disorder in society. And from what I understand, there's a lot of low-level theft going on in the States at the moment. People just running into stores and stealing stuff. And
so I mean, I don't know when it's going to happen, but next time there's a global financial crisis, it's going to be, 2008 times 100. It's going to be an absolute, mother. And obviously, when you have things like, inflation and collapsing asset prices and instability, things can go very, very haywire. And when banks start running out of cash and they can't settle with each other, then that's when you get basically a run on the bank or because effectively what keeps the global financial system running is that money is always moving. And so there's a certain amount of money, but it's moving. And when one bank internationally or a country says, we have faith that we're going to get paid by this other bank, then they will freely trade and do commerce. But when banks start failing or financial institutions start failing, the other institutions start saying, well, we don't want to lend any money to that. So then they shut up shop, and then that other bank can't settle their transactions, and then so everything sort of stops. So this is why, we handle these things better now, but we were only 30 minutes away in 2008 from all of the ATMs in the world basically stopping serving money because the big financials in the US were basically just going to clam up their buttholes and say, we're out of cash, we can't do anything. And so it was only Obama coming in with $700 billion of stimulus, which seems like chump change now, that kind of kept the liquidity in the system moving. So if we end up in a global financial train wreck, the interesting thing is obviously all of the people in the city, like if ATMs around the world stopped working tomorrow, any major city is only 3 days away from basic cannibalism and rioting, because when your ATM stops and then you can't buy food and then businesses shut up their windows and you're in a city, there's nowhere to go and get food. So then it's just going to turn into mayhem. So actually the next time that there's like a big financial crash, the safest people in the world in terms of food security will be farmers, people living off land. Like if there's a goat herder in Afghanistan who doesn't use money, who milks his goats and lives off the land, he's not going to give a crap if there's like a financial crisis. So he's actually the safest person on the planet. The person who's going to be the most affected is some billionaire in New York when all of a sudden there's like rioting and people can't get food and they're looting the supermarkets and killing any wealthy person they find. So we're all around the world, governments are trying to stave off a huge financial crisis, but the global financial system was already way on the edge of like code red before COVID, and now we've had COVID, and now we've all this money, so things are very, very unstable. I mean, I'm surprised at how far we're kicking the can down the road, but it's not a healthy situation.
Yeah, quite right. Hey, Jamie, was there anything that you wanted to add there, buddy?
Oh no, so yeah, I find it interesting. Like definitely, yeah, just yeah, I don't really know, but I did have something to say. But yeah, I just find it all interesting, like the whole thing, you know, like because
It's very complex. There's
Yeah.
sort of 1,000 moving parts, and they've
Yeah.
all got a sort of a string line to each other in one way or another. Sort of one cog affects the other way the other cog moves,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, sorry. No, yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, I guess we've seen that for an extent over the last 2 years, because like anyone that was so-called essential, as like myself, I could argue that what I was doing wasn't essential, but seeing it was. Yeah, we all had jobs, and then like the office workers and all that, they got sent home, supposedly work from home, and then sort of essential workers were kind of almost treated like gods in a funny sort of a way. It's probably not a good analogy, but you know what I'm trying to say. You know,
well, yeah. I mean that they become sort of these people that have got more rights than your general population, so they almost become part of the sort of like upper middle sort of
yeah,
zone where you don't have as much freedom as the authority or the elites, but you've got more than sort of the run of the mill person. You get to sort
yeah,
of speed around the town without any traffic and
Yeah, I mean the
Yeah.
next time that there's like a global financial reset, or say for example there's a great reset where all the countries go bankrupt and all the debt has to get wiped out, and we kind of say, okay, there's not going to be any more billionaires. No one can have $250 billion while someone's starving. I mean, as a planet, we could all get together and decide that, right? But we just haven't decided that. So if things get really bad, we could just all decide that there's some new system. And
yeah.
you know, the poorest people, all the poorest paid people in society are police officers, nurses, farmers, this kind of thing. And they're all the people that are kind of keeping us running. So as a human organization, we need to kind of decide like what's most important. You know, the highest paid people are basically financiers in New York that just kind of shuffle derivatives around and play with everyone's lives. Is that actually adding value or not really, you know?
That's a pretty interesting point you make there, because again, coming back to this no jabs, no jobs thing, you're finding all these, in America especially, a lot of my sort of references come from there because it's a great example case point. It's almost like 50 different countries in one, each state's operating slightly differently. But a big part of this no jab, no job is healthcare workers. As you say, your essential workers. These people were your gods, your heroes last year, and this year they're unemployed. They don't have jobs, thus creating a shortage in that industry. So it's again, one cog turns another.
Yeah, if I can just answer a question, there's a guy, Andrew David Cronk, and he's basically asked, Seeby, why can't you just print enough money for everyone? It's all just speculative anyway. So I want to answer that. So basically, the reason that this is what governments are trying. Governments are trying to print enough money and give it to everyone. But as I say, if you have a fixed amount of stuff and you print more money, eventually the fixed amount of stuff is just divided amongst more money, so everything starts costing more. So you end up with inflation. Like if basically the New Zealand government said, okay, everyone's going to have $1 million tomorrow in the bank, and so everyone's a millionaire, we wouldn't all be millionaires, because all of a sudden everyone would say, okay, well, I'm going to just pay more for that car and trade me, and then all of a sudden, you know, houses would be $5 million instead of, you know, $3 million. So it just doesn't work that way. Money is just a representation, an agreement between ourselves of, you know, it's just an imaginary thing of like, we agree this has some kind of value. If you add some zeros or remove some zeros, it doesn't matter. And like if you go to Thailand, you have like $10,000 notes, but they're worth the same as a $10 note. So creating money doesn't actually create any value. The only power in an economy is actually productive capability. And this is the reason that another reason the US is kind of going off the right rails, is that in the 1950s and 60s, the US had tremendous productive capability in that they were making cars, they had General Motors, they had all the car companies, they were making washing machines, they were the first TV companies, all this sort of stuff.
Absolutely.
But they don't make anything anymore. And modern economists, if you go to university, they will tell you the power in an economy is the consumer and consumption, because they have the money. But it's completely wrong. So if you have a simple example, if you imagine two little island nations, right? You have Island One, and all they have is like a printing press and some, coconut paper, and they just basically make dollar bills. And then you have this other island that makes TVs and microwaves and tools and fishing nets and all this kind of thing. Now, if Island A that just has the printing press sends these notes across to the other island, and then in exchange they get all this useful stuff. If trading stops between them, it's not the company that's the consumer that has the money, that has any power. It's the company that has the production. And that example is basically the US and China now. The US doesn't produce anything because people have had such a free ride that they're living off the US dollar being a reserve currency and printing money, that American people get a 3-to-1 advantage over most of the rest of the world in what they have to pay for things. And they just been going into debt, but they don't actually produce anything anymore. So what's going to happen is when the US dollar gets destroyed, as it is happening right now, then China's going to say, why do we want worthless US dollars for all this valuable stuff? Why don't we just sell all this stuff to our own people, and then our own people will be a lot better off? So China is going to start deciding, why ship all our goods to the US and get paid in US dollars, which are being destroyed because they're going to get printed into oblivion and they won't be worth anything soon. Why don't we just keep all that stuff for ourselves? So after this great reset, after the next financial crisis, my prediction is that the US is not going to be the superpower that it once was. And in order to then go back to that spot, they're going to have to work a lot harder. There's more engineers that are created that graduate in 1 week in China than all of the USA. So
absolutely incredible. An absolute manufacturing powerhouse. And it's no doubt that they've got some extraordinary technology. Just recently, there's been talk of a supersonic subspace missile, which is sort of taking war to space, or Star Wars.
Well, this is what bloody Trump kicked off. I mean, Trump opened a real can of worms when he kicked off the Space Force, and it was almost comedic because when he announced the Space Force, no one in the US government knew anything about the Space Force. He just had an idea and then he blabbed it out, and then they had to kind of hurry to do things. And then they literally stole the Star Trek logo for the US Space Force. Basically, got a government
in the uniforms
to rip off Star Trek. But then the trouble is all the other countries around the world said, okay, now we're going to have to militarize space. So China then basically said, oh, we've all agreed not to militarize space, but now we're going to militarize space. So now there's an arms race in space, which is a horrendous thing. So, it was the dumbest move ever by Trump, but he's done a lot of dumb moves. So.
Absolutely. I'll just turn you up a little bit there, buddy. Jamie, over to you, mate. You got a question?
Yes, you're not a fan of Trump?
I mean, Trump has value because he's outside the system. But the thing is that the US political system has just become such a puppet show that it's the illusion of choice, right? Like if you give people, you're choosing, then you can hide the fact that they don't really have a choice because both those people are in the hands of corporations. And the US political system is now so controlled by corporate lobby. I mean, you have corporate lobbyists spending hundreds of millions of dollars on candidates. If you spend $100 million on a candidate like Obama or whatever, then that candidate is owned by you at the end of the day. That candidate has to give you quid pro quo. So actually what happened with Kim.com was Obama got $150 million of campaign money from the Music Industry Association and the Motion Picture Association in America. And they basically said, look, we're really concerned about this internet piracy stuff. If you become president, then we want you to take action, and you must take action because we're giving you all this money. So when Obama came into power, basically it was actually Biden that was his deputy. And they said, what person on the internet are we going to go after? Now, there were a lot of companies doing the same thing as Kim.com. There was, Dropbox, there was Box, there was file sharing, there's all kinds of things. It was the Wild West a little while ago. Now, Dropbox.com has become a reputable multi-billion-dollar company. But the thing is it was headquartered in America with like a presentable white guy who was on the stock exchange. Kim.com is like an overweight German who looks like a supervillain who kind of lives large, and he's not in America. So he was an easy target of like, okay, let's fuck this guy. So basically, the reason that Kim.com got fucked over is because Obama got given $150 million of campaign money by the music, industry association of America. And they said, we want someone's head on a plate. And they paid for that to happen. And, Kim took the consequence, which I think was unfair. Now, Kim has a reputation, good and bad, but I think what happened was completely unfair. But this is the problem with the US, is that any political party that you get, whether Democrat or Republican, they're all just figureheads, right? And so, people go to all of this hassle of voting, and then there's still candidate A and candidate B are still in the pocket of the corporations. Now, we're lucky in New Zealand that we don't have, so much money in politics. And so we have a little bit more freedom. And I think politicians are a little bit more honorable. But essentially, politicians in the US, also see it as a way to get wealthy. So, I mean, I'm actually a fan of Bill Clinton. I met him a couple of times, and he seems like, is a hell of a nice guy, but obviously I don't see what goes on behind closed doors. But him and Hillary, I think, are worth like $130 million. So how does a politician make $130 million? Well, it's getting paybacks for things that you do while you're in office that you promised to do while you're on the campaign trail, while you were paid to, do things. So it's all a
big
mess.
Money go round.
Yeah. So the reason that people like Trump is because he was a little bit outside that system and basically said F you, and that's what people wanted to do. But the other thing is that Trump is a complete madman, probably a rapist and a predator. Was totally content to just see the planet burn, doesn't believe in science, doesn't believe in global warming. So there's a lot of downsides to Trump, but there were the upsides were that he wasn't the establishment, right? So, yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of Trump as like a cartoon character, supervillain. Is he good for the planet? No, he didn't believe in renewables, didn't believe anything. Was he good to just say F you to the establishment? Absolutely. But the US needs to get money out of politics and, go back to kind of, real stuff. And they're so far away from that. I'm not sure what the solution is. They're so polarized. It's almost like the US is breaking into two countries. And, we may even see like succession, like California is the world's 4th largest economy by itself. And they're talking about basically seceding, which is just saying we don't want to be part of the US anymore. I mean, it's a very minor thing, but there are people in there that say we don't want to have, a redneck president again. We want to, govern ourselves. So, there's a lot of press, like a pressure cooker that's just about to explode, and
Absolutely.
There's a lot of things under the current that's just building up and building up and building up. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I know that the warning signs are all there that something bad is about to happen.
Wild stuff. Selena Spain on the line now. Do you hear us?
Yeah. Hi.
Hey, do you have a question for Seeby or a comment or anything to say?
Well, I have a little. I don't like to speak too much, but I just have a little comment about like Seeby, New Zealand's best and brightest. A lot have already left, but now we're seeing that a lot are actually still here and they come to woodwork. And I think like maybe, you're an inspiration to a lot of people that need the confidence to just step up. So what do you think? Like, what do you have any insights into like what's, the situation? New Zealand is there's a lot of negativity out there. So do you have anything inspiring? Yeah.
Any kind of answer like that has to take into account kind of the context of the community that you're answering for. I mean, I think at a global multi-macro level, we've become too disconnected from nature. There's I think there's an Earth Day or whatever, which is like the day that we use up one planet's worth of resources, and I think it's in like June now. So essentially, the planet's forests and ecosystems and things is like a bank balance. If you have $1,000 in your bank account, and each year you earn $50, but you withdraw $100, you might have positive money for a few years, but at some point you're going to hit the bottom rock hard, and then all of a sudden you're out of money. And so we've sort of got the situation where every year there are rainforests, but we cut down more rainforests than grow back. And so at some point in the next decade, we're going to hit like hard zero where there's just like nothing left. And there's nothing, there's no resources for toilet paper and all sorts of things. So even if you ignore global warming, we are on, kind of an ecological resource, catastrophe. So humans need to learn how to live more in harmony with the planet, regardless of like the political, financial, or monetary system. And we need to do it pretty fast. And we're going to have to decide how that works as a planet. I mean, I think something that would be good would be, no more countries and things, because it's all just arbitrary borders, and it causes conflict, and it causes kind of competition. But
wow, that's a huge concept.
Well, the trouble is how would you go about it? Because if you open all the borders, then you get mixing of people, and there is a thing in Europe, where Europe has been very open to immigrants. And things, but then there has been like real problems of kind of non-understanding of cultures and that kind of thing. Like there's the religion where you're kind of not allowed to talk about their god or draw them or whatever, and they sometimes do seem
right.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a huge melting pot, Europe, that's for sure. And I mean, it's almost become a fact of life. I mean, Trump had a huge problem with walls and borders. Now Biden's inherited a huge problem with walls and borders, and now we're experiencing walls and borders. It just seems to be like when we were young, America and the rest of the world was almost sort of just like an example for where we're going to be sort of a year, 2 years, 3 years down the track, whether it was violence, music, style, or even the way that we're being governed, and all these sorts of things. Interesting, again, what you say. You keep mentioning
there was a
great reset,
There was a philosopher, I can't remember, it's some famous quote, but basically he said that the only way he thinks to create peace on Earth would be to, for aliens to arrive, because then immediately humanity would band into like an us and them, and then humanity would kind of be combined of like we're humans and there's aliens. And it's like humans are naturally psychologically tribal, and so it's like if you're on the North Shore, then it's like you hate Aucklanders. But if you're part of Greater Auckland, then you have like a thing with like Waikato, and then it's like Auckland versus our rugby team or whatever, and then you have like North Island versus South Island, and then you have like we're all New Zealanders, but we're like versus Australia, and then we're all like Kiwis and Aussies, but we're like versus those pricks South Africans or whatever.
Yeah,
like
we're intrinsically sort of it's the survival of the fittest in the rawest form, really, isn't it?
Well, we basically identify continually into kind of different groups, but humans kind of love that kind of tribal kind of grouping. But I think that the US is probably a little bit big. I mean, the trouble is that humans are fallible creatures, and I don't think it's good for one person to, like the president or whatever, to be controlling all of the nukes and all of the resources of like trillions of dollars. I mean, basically the US is as large as Europe, and it's essentially 50 countries that would join together. So the individual states, a lot of the states are actually larger than like France and Italy and all that kind of thing. I think the world would be better off if all of the states were split into little states, and then they didn't have the economic power to, I mean, we don't have the nuclear arms race that we used to, but I think where the world needs to kind of move to is a whole set of thousands of kind of individual sustainable villages that trade with each other and have their own local policing and that kind of thing, because these kind of like mega countries like China and the US and Russia, they cause problems because then you get the ego of one crazy man at the helm, and you get so much kind of groundswell, and it's too much. Whereas if you had 50 countries in North America, then they could kind of have a little bit more reason of like, hey, well, maybe it's not a good idea to have this like giant military program, and we're not all going to contribute, and it'd be a little bit more voting system. So, I think some of the countries got a bit too big. New Zealand's probably about the right size.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Indeed. Is there anyone in the chat that's got any questions that they want to throw in there? Selena, did you have a follow-up question or anything you wanted to add at all?
Let's see. Well, I've learned a lot just by listening because Seeby seems to have, planetary knowledge. So it's very interesting, and keep it up and keep going on people's podcasts and just spreading the knowledge. It's great.
Yeah.
Well, most of the time I keep to myself, so it's good. It's nice to be appreciated.
Oh, good. Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of, there's the stories and the information that the mainstream media sort of picks up and runs with and likes to tell. And then there's this whole other sort of layer of news, which is actually way more interesting. But for some reason, it's almost like the mainstream media doesn't think we'll quite understand it. Yeah, no, it's pretty interesting. That's for sure.
Jamie.
Jamie, brother.
Yo.
Let me just turn you up a bit. Sorry, mate. I was just turning you down because of the spa.
Far away from the microphone. But yeah, talking of global warming, we load the truck up to 80 tonne and we get 1.5 kilometres to the litre. And even if it's at like B doubles, I think last time I read, there's probably more, but I think it was from 2011, they done a survey. 11,000 B doubles run up the Hume Highway between Sydney and Melbourne a night, and they'll all be up on weight, so they'll all be doing about 1.7 kilometres to the litre. Like, that's just, I use about $1,000 of diesel a day, and you just go on and this can't be good. And then I'm just basically carting rubbish. Like, I'm carting rubbish halfway around the country. It gets right. So that's one good thing, but it's like I've often thought, I've tried sort of half done the math, but didn't quite work it out. Is it better to throw it in a hole and not half around the country? But the idea is this place, but we're probably going to get there one day. But yeah, it's just interesting. I work for one of the richest people in Australia, which is interesting. I find that is interesting as well. Like, just the whole business model is just blows my mind. It's quite amazing.
Phenomenal insight. Thank you for that.
No, you're right. It's just one of those things you don't think about. Sometimes you rock up to a joint and they go, "Oh, we don't have a load for you, but we're going to load up empty pallets to go to Melbourne." You're like, "What for?" Like, we got to get them to Melbourne, or they might just cut something completely ridiculous that you're just going, "What's the point?" There's even been times where, not so much me, I haven't been this lucky, but trucks will go Brisbane to Melbourne, and they'll go, "Oh, actually, we don't need this. We'll sign the paperwork, we'll give it back to you, and you go back to Brisbane with the same stuff on they haven't even taken it off," and they just use trucks as like rolling storage.
Yeah, right. That's incredible you say that.
Please, that's
horrific. And it's probably, and you think about it, you go, "Well, is that," like, you think, "Oh, how does the company afford it?" But it's probably cheaper than putting it in a warehouse.
It is bizarre, and again, that comes back to what we were discussing earlier, the supply chain shortage, and it also blends into unemployment, because there's this huge global truck driver shortage. You've got all these boats that are backing up at the ports. You've got all these containers that aren't able. You got to send back the empty containers, or get rid of them. It's out of control. Hey!
There's a lot of these studies that basically are saying, how many microplastics are in the environment, and they're finding, 30 or 40,000 pieces of plastic inside, newborn babies. Like, microplastic is like tiny, you can barely see it. But
Incredible.
obviously any organic animal like a human or whatever can't digest plastic and can't excrete it. We've got no system in our body to kind of grab onto plastic and kind of get it out of tissues. So fish and meat and everything have kind of got all this plastic, and we don't know what the long-term health effects of that are. So obviously a lot of countries are banning single-use plastic bags and things, but then even if you have your supermarket bags banned, you still got all the packaging that everything comes in, right? So I've sort of been kind of feeling panicky about this and all that kind of thing. But I remember when I was a kid, 10 years old, they used to have the milk run, and they'd basically you'd have your milk that would be like 6 bottles a day or something. We all used to drink crazy amounts of milk, and all that you had was like the little silver top, and then all the bottles would be picked up and recycled, and it was all the same bottle. So I sort of think the world needs to evolve pretty fast, where we kind of move away from the giant companies like Kellogg's and everything that have to have all this branding and advertising and all that sort of stuff, and we need to kind of move to like, okay, you have potatoes, you have rice, you have whatever it is, and you bring a selection of kind of glass reusable containers to the supermarket, and then those will get filled up, kind of like a bulk supply thing. But
interesting you say that. I actually heard someone mention that there was talk, I think this might have been in the UK, of using reusable stainless steel milk bottles. Because, of course, intrinsically with glass, you can often get the shards, which aren't much fun. With reusable bottles and things like that, there is a risk of sharding. But yeah, I think something different
from sharting, which is a whole other thing, altogether.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's a completely different issue there, especially. But yeah, reusable items, alternative packaging methods. But it's a huge problem. I mean, we've almost gone from hunter and gatherers to our extent of hunting and gathering is literally we do it down the supermarket aisle now, don't we? We're hunting. We're trying to get this toilet paper before anyone else sort of sees it's there, and we sort of pounce on it before it sort of disappears. And the same with the nice cuts of meat and things like that. Like during the lockdown, I went to the supermarkets and I noticed all the good actual real meat was gone, and you'd have these strip aisle in the coolers, and it would be all your counterfeit or synthetic. I call them sort of I call it like tofu. I call that faux food. It's kind of like your fake pies and all your fake sausages. They're what are they? They're animal analogs. I couldn't for the life of me eat a sausage, but an animal sausage, but I'll eat something that resembles it and feel good.
Yeah,
it's kind of like an oxymoron.
Something that's probably related to the food topic and interesting. In January of this year, I did my first large-scale juice fast, so I didn't eat anything apart from drinking like clear vegetable juice for 28 days in January. And after
clear vegetable juice. What's clear vegetable juice? Like
so
cabbage juice?
Basically not with like pulpy stuff. So not like a smoothie.
Right.
Basically something
like
that
fiberless,
looks like coloured water, like coloured water. The consistency of not thick, no roughage.
Not
but
pulpy.
Anyway, after 4 days, you completely stop being hungry, and it actually takes your body can burn 3 different types of fuel for energy. So you can burn carbohydrates, which your body always burns first. Okay. And then you can burn alcohol, which is actually a fuel source, which you burn second. And then basically you can burn fat. And when you're burning fat, it's called ketosis, which is the process of basically your body breaking down fat cells and using them for energy. And when you burn fat or protein, it's a very long-lasting kind of energy, whereas carbohydrates tend to kind of, burning carbohydrates in your body is kind of like burning newspaper. It lights up really fast. And burning fat is kind of like burning coal or something that just sits there and embers. But anyway, after 4 days, I had zero hunger, and essentially what happens is it takes about 4 days for your body to switch energy systems. And once your body is switched over, it turns into like a lean fat burning machine. And then basically you just
like the George Foreman grill, right?
You basically burn about half a kilo of fat a day. So I lost 12 kilograms in 24 days. But
damn,
you can obviously do that kind of thing as a water fast. But the trouble is, if you do a water fast, then your body's not replacing like the salts and electrolytes and that kind of thing. And so obviously the mineral balance of your body kind of starts to run low, and it's a lot more difficult. I once did an 8-day water fast, which was very psychologically tough, but a 28-day juice fast was actually like a walk in the park, and it's the best thing that I've done for my health ever. Like I was kind of feeling pretty middle-aged and bad, and like all my back pain went away, all my joint pain went away. Like, I felt like 10 years younger at the end of it, and lost 12 kilograms. But the kind of the reason I'm talking about that is it kind of almost made me wonder whether, like, I just felt that I just didn't need to eat very much at all. But once I got back in the habit of eating 3 meals a day, all of a sudden I need to eat 3 meals a day, and then I put a lot of the weight back on. But I almost kind of wonder whether things have, in the past, obviously, if you're like a Kalahari bushman, you might have like a,
I see what you're saying.
Or you might have like some berries, and then you might not eat for 3 or 4 days. So, most animals, where you're like a lion is a mammal, right? And a lion might go 2 weeks without eating anything. And humans have had that skill, but we don't use that skill, and so our bodies are not attuned to that. And so there's actually a bit of a problem in that the food industry is in the business of selling food, and so they have the interest of maybe everyone eating more than we actually need to. And then of course in America you have all these empty calories. So basically overweight people in America are like basically the starving fat, where they're hungry because they're actually starving. But the thing is, the reason they're starving is because their insides are covered in like McDonald's grease and KFC grease and things. So their bodies are getting no nutrients, and so because you're not getting nutrients, you're starving. And so because you're starving, you eat more and then you put on weight. But it's actually all basically just like gunked up stuff. So, I had a bunch of like kidney stones and liver stones and gallstones and things that all kind of came out in the process. Because if you just constantly juice, like basically our bodies are just a series of tubes, and like if you get coronary, heart disease or whatever, you get all the gunk, built up. If all you do for like a month is just flush your body with liquid and nothing else, then it doesn't have to divert any energy to digestion, which takes a huge amount of energy. And you actually have this massive rush of energy, but also like it starts to clean up your system. So my eyesight improved, my hearing improved. My asthma allergies went away, so it's really an incredible thing. So I actually documented the whole thing on my Instagram account, and basically I've got like I sort of documented it. So it's on my Instagram TV channel. There's a bunch of videos on like my juice fast journey. So if anyone's interested, you could kind of go and watch that, and it's got some helpful tips and how I went. So every second day I basically did like a little vlog. So I think there's like 15 vlogs on there. But one of the important things is you have to make sure it's organic, because in order to survive on juice, I was drinking about 5 liters of juice per day. But if you have pesticides and things on there, like the amount of produce is like this much produce. And of course, what you're going to do is you're going to magnify all of the pesticides and then concentrate them into the juice. So if you do a juice fast, it has to be organic, because otherwise, you're just going to get like a lot. You're going to be eating like a lot of vegetables with a lot of pesticides on it. And so I actually had some non-organic juice, one day, and I instantly got a headache and like foggy vision, and I felt horrible. And I was like, I feel like I'm being poisoned. And it was actually that I was so sensitive to like the harsh chemicals and things. So the juice that I was having was actually mainly from my friend's vegetable garden and stuff. But yeah, so it was a really interesting process, but it sort of taught me like, maybe we don't actually need to eat that much. But I'm back to the old habit. So.
Yeah, I think it sort of works out as we're sort of creatures of our environment. The environment's been set up for us to never be hungry, to never be cold, all these sorts of things. If there's a slight draft, that's going to become a big
Well,
problem.
this is the thing that like Wim Hof, the Iceman Wim Hof who does.
Yeah, I've actually I got an email from him a few years ago. I was really interested in the Wim Hof method, and incredible stuff. I use the method all the time. It's fucking brilliant. But yeah, he said that he would actually quite like to come down here and do some of his physiological testing with the Aboriginal folk.
His son's actually either here or coming here at the moment. But I've met Wim a couple of times. I met Wim Hof at Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins got him down, and I ended up meeting him. But it's amazing because he takes you through a process where, like, I can't hold my breath more than like 30 seconds, and then I did a kind of thing with Wim and like 100 people, and then he basically got us to hold our breaths for like 5 minutes by, super hyperventilating and priming ourselves. So he's amazing. But I guess the thing about Wim and the cold and everything is that he's like, as you were saying, we're so padded and protected, and I think humans are designed to live in a range of like, hot, cold, hungry, thirsty, that kind of thing. And if you have no kind of variation, I think that's another reason why we're also, kind of unhappy and have like mental disease. Humans actually need that kind of pressure and stress of a bit of uncomfort to then be like, oh, actually things are great because I'm comfortable. If you're kind of comfortable all the time sitting on your couch, then you eventually get unhappy because you're like, oh, well, this now feels bad,
Have you got an insight into this sort of strange paradox between, I think it was Sweden had a reasonably short lockdown, reasonably short vaccination levels, and also a reasonably low mortality rate, let's say.
Yeah, so I was looking into this recently. I actually posted it on my Instagram because I was kind of pretty shocked. But yeah, I think the Telegraph or the Independent in the UK, the paper did a thing about it. But yeah, so Sweden was very much pro personal freedom. If you want to get vaccinated, get vaccinated. If you don't want to get vaccinated, don't get vaccinated. We're not going to shut businesses. It's people's choice. If you're immunocompromised, stay home if you want, but if you want to risk it, then go out. And so Sweden's COVID rates did go crazy, and their deaths from COVID did go crazy. So they had issues. But the thing is that their overall mortality, when you compare it with the rest of Europe over the last couple of years, is almost identical. So essentially, Sweden did have a COVID problem because they didn't lock down and they didn't vaccinate, but they didn't have a domestic violence issue. They didn't have a suicide issue. They didn't have things. And so when you looked at basically, when people are locked down, they drink themselves to death and things. So Sweden's mortality from basically doing nothing is basically the same as the rest of Europe, and that really shocked me because then it made me think, well, hang on, maybe we're actually just doing the wrong thing. But I don't want to get spanked by Jacinda for saying that. But it is
exactly. We're not saying that at all. We're just using Sweden as an example, and that leads me to the thought process of: are the lockdowns making people sick? And the answer is clearly yes. People are sick of the lockdowns. A sedentary lifestyle we know isn't healthy. As you say, alcoholism. Alcohol's an essential service. Just saying. These are our gods. Hey, Jamie. Hey, let me just cut over to Jamie. What do you reckon, mate? Alcohol as an essential service?
I wanted to ask if you can add gin to your juice diet, because Snoop Dogg is always, you got to have the gin with the juice.
Lean back.
I forgot on the other point. Oh yeah, do you think the New Zealand government would have been better off just saying we're going to open up like they've done here? Like, because in Queensland, basically on the 17th of December, you were going to be open, whether you're vaccinated or not. They want 70%, but if they don't get it, tough shit. And they're expecting 250 people to die in the first 2 weeks or something. But for the sake of for the sake of everyone's mental health, would have it been better for Jacinda Ardern instead of doing some fucking red light, green light, blue light, orange light fucking thing, just to go, let's open the joint up and we'll see what happens, you know? Like,
yeah, I mean, the trouble is obviously
Thank
if you do that, then you can't go back. It's like putting the genie in
Quite
the box.
right.
So I think that the I think Jacinda's doing a relatively good job, and I think she's doing the best job that she can. It does, however, as a business owner, I'm a little bit kind of, thinking that maybe the 90% target is, I mean, it's a very high target. I don't think any other country in the world has sort of demanded, if you don't get to 90% vaccination, we're not open. And as I said, my understanding is that the US is about 55% vaccinated because obviously half the people in the US don't believe in vaccines because of Trump. And so, but the US is virtually 100% open. All my friends are going to festivals and all sorts of things. So basically, they had a year of COVID. It swept through. A lot of people got it. Some people, were vaccinated. Most people didn't die. Yes, they had some, overloading, but that's basically kind of passed, and now they're kind of pretty much back to normal. So if we're at, 85% already, then we're going to be a lot better than the US is 55%, and the US is open. So obviously we have limited ICU beds and that kind of thing. And the other thing that's the problem is that if we have any ICU beds that are taken up with COVID, then that might push someone out who's having a heart transplant or who has like a motorbike accident or something like that. So having our health system overwhelmed is going to have a flow-on effect to other people that have regular medical problems, and so we do need to take that into account, and that's one of the things that's kind of being factored in. But we are sort of staring down the barrel of a massive financial bomb from our biggest city being shut so long.
It's true,
it's about pain.
Yeah, quite right. And it's hard, and that's the thing, it's very hard to compare apples with apples in this situation. We're a landlocked country, so we've got a unique set of circumstances, and also we're as such a single state where we've got we don't have multiple states, so we can have one rule, one ring to rule them.
It's crazy to think that Melbourne.
I'll just bring your volume up there, my brother.
Yeah, sweet, yeah. It's crazy to think that Melbourne had 2,000 cases and they opened up last night. Or a couple of days ago. I guess everyone protesting. Maybe that. I like to think that they changed it, but anyway, Dan Andrews has basically just gone to fuck with it. We're going to open it up. If you're vaccinated, do whatever you want. Let's let it. And New South Wales have done the same, but they got their cases down to about 300. So us in Queensland, we got no cases or next to none. And then they're saying by the 17th, everyone's going to be allowed in. Basically, if you're vaccinated, welcome to Queensland.
What do they call it over there? Do they call it the DIY track and tracing system, where if you get COVID, you have to just start going through your thing and calling all your mates up and say, mate? Do they call it that, like the DIY track and trace or something?
I don't know. But yeah, it's pretty. Like you guys, if you get COVID, you get sent to a hotel. Whereas over here, they ring you up and just go, yeah, mate. It's probably best if you stay home for the next 14 days, mate. Yeah, if you get it over here, you actually have to go home, move all your family out of the home, and you have to have your own air conditioning, your own sealed, basically.
Turn into Bubble Boy. You got to be like Bubble Boy. Remember that movie?
Yeah, absolutely. They give you a glorified iron lung, and it's almost like one of those pup tents that you see on the Everest Antarctic adventure. Anyway,
our neighbours got put into isolation because she's a teacher, and they had cases in the school, and I was stood on my driveway. We kept the 1.5. They were stood on their driveway. We weren't having a beer, but I'll say it sounds better if we're having a beer on a Friday night, just chatting.
Yeah.
And they got two negative. They were all good because they were all there, but they had to get like negative cases for a few days in a row, and then they got let back out. But it's pretty crazy to think that, like, I don't really give a fuck, you know, like, yeah, we were going shopping for them, all the rest of it, but it's pretty. But then I guess you could say that's probably why it's going crazy in New South Wales and Victoria, because of that kind of thing, you know.
Yeah, it's wild stuff, all right. It's interesting. I mean, they say it's all based on a high trust model, and I guess trust's a two-way street, so everyone's just hoping for the best. Hey, guys, this podcast, I suppose it could go on all night if we let it. Where are we up to? 2 hours and 13 minutes. How's everyone feeling? I'm getting a little bit tired.
I think.
Yeah, it will. How are you? Oh, look at this fella here.
What
He's
about
mixing
chat?
My ice with my sparkle water, so that'll be a good mix for later. I'll give that a go.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to bail out, I think. So
yeah, we'll wind it up, eh? Hey, Seeby, hey, we appreciate you so much, mate.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again.
It's an absolute pleasure, and I know that Thane and Sophia enjoy talking to you, and so do the chat. They're really interested in you, and you've got a wealth of knowledge, mate, and it's brilliant to have you on. We appreciate you.
You're massaging my ego. God bless you. You know?
Oh, mate, I think you're on a good level of knowledge. You know, you've got a good scope of what's happening, and you've got a good recall. You've got great recall.
Thanks. My head's getting bigger and bigger by the second. See, look, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
It's good, mate. It's good. It's good to know you're surrounded by like-minded, intelligent people.
Yeah. See you guys, and this will be the first radio show I've ever done where someone's been in a spa. That's pretty legendary, mate. So,
yeah. To be honest with you, I buy the spa, and we probably don't even use it once a month. So we built the whole house to the spa, and we barely use it.
It's very baller, you know. If you didn't have the mullet, I'd be thinking, am I like, you know, is this the Wolf of Wall Street or something? You know, like I'm talking to a man in a spa on a radio show. Like, who is this goddamn rock star? You know?
Well, yeah, I bought it because you know Snoop Dogg has got a jacuzzi. One of my life lessons. Any life lesson I learned when I was a teenager was from Snoop Dogg or Dr. Dre, and they got a spa. But yeah, I've got no
jacuzzi.
Got no lady.
I might have to sit in mine next time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Do it if you've got a spa. Sit in it. They are good. They are relaxing, and there's no better way to soothe the muscles at the end of the day, is it?
Oh, okay. See you later,
hey,
guys.
Thanks so much, Seeby. I'll let you go. Okay, buddy.
Okay. Thanks, guys. See ya.
Good night, mate.
I was going to say, I'll leave you with this one point. Are you ready for it?
Yep, let's go to full screen on you there.
The land is Australia without rugby league is not Australia.
Wise words, my friend. We appreciate you. Hey, that's awesome, mate. Thanks for coming on the show. I'm going to bid you adieu.
Yeah, no worries. Anytime. We'll do it. Next time we'll do it.
Yeah, call in next time. We'll have the line open for you, okay?
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
Cheers, brother. Take care. And thanks, kids. Hey, kids. You too, kids, are awesome.
So,
do the kids want to say something?
You want to say something? Hi. You want to say?
Hey, mate. Are you guys enjoying the spa pool? You having fun there?
Yeah.
Do you like? What's better, Australia or New Zealand? What's better, Australia or New Zealand? Australia.
Oh.
Mate, you are.
Do you like Queensland or New Zealand?
Queensland or New Zealand? New Zealand
today. You like Queensland, do you? Are you Australian or are you Kiwi? I'm Kiwi. Oh, are you Kiwi? Can you say g'day, mate? G'day, mate.
G'day, mate.
Mate.
You got a beautiful little family there, mate. I'm very jealous.
Fair dinkum. Can you say
Fair
crack?
dinkum, I remember that thing. Funny.
I could go on all night.
Okay, buddy. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, no worries. You have a good one.
Cheers, buddy.
Bye.
And Miss Selena Spain, how did you enjoy the show tonight?
Well, phenomenal as usual. So many interesting people out there, eh?
Oh, big show tonight. Big show tonight.
Yeah.
And how are your Bluetooth headphones going?
Oh, these, they're working better, yeah. I'm so sorry about the potato sound last night. Like, oh my god. Yeah, because it was windy and,
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
but
that they're a little bit distorted. I've got the volume turned right down. I'm just going to set it to 100. Let's just do a quick audio test. 1 2 3 1 2 3.
check, check. Check, check, check. 1, 2, 3. What? So I try it without the headphones.
Hey, actually, it's not so bad. Hey, Selena Spain, thanks for calling in on the show. We appreciate you. You have a freaking excellent evening, okay? We'll hopefully
Yeah,
see
you
you
too.
tomorrow night. I'm not sure what we've got planned for tomorrow
Yeah.
night, but hopefully it's a big show. It might be a replay. I don't know.
Okay. Well done. Take care.
Okay, you take care now. I appreciate you. Okay, well, that was one big ass show. We appreciate you guys for coming through again. Thanks to Seeby Woodhouse for coming through and sharing his knowledge, because we couldn't have done it without him. And of course, thanks to the presenters of the show, Mr. Thane Kirby, Sophia Mantell, Luke Dallow, who was absent from the show tonight, and of course, yours truly, Benny Mack. We appreciate you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come on through. If anyone's got anything that they want to get involved with and share any knowledge, fire it in the chat right now before we wrap the show up, and I will try to answer it just as good. David Cook. No, I don't think you. If you're trying to make vegetable juice, you put it in juicer, my guy. You don't just boil like veg water, okay? You're actually imagine just taking an apple and just squeezing it, like putting it in a press, dig, 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 goosh. Put a glass under there, you know. That's what I'm talking about. You don't boil it, you juice it. Hey, big show tonight. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. And thanks to the sponsors. We couldn't have done it without the amazing sponsors. Of course, I've got no idea where these promos are. I don't know where the promos are, but anyway, it's been your boy Benny Mack, the fact checker. What a great show. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. It has been another episode of Talkback with Thane and Sophia. And I'll just see if I can... Oh, here's our promo.
Talkback with Thane and Sophia wants to put you in the draw for a box of Lover Pie pies. Here's the incentive. We want to grow this beautiful community. All you got to do is share the show. Share the show on Facebook. One share is one entry into a delicious box of Lover Pie pies that will draw this Friday.
Well, there you have it. I've got a feeling that this might be the outro.